Hello. As is obvious, this is my first video for some time. Since I last recorded anything, I've been in hospital, I've had surgery to fit a new hip, and that was nearly 5 weeks ago now. And since then I have been recovering from the surgery, which has taken its toll, and in some ways my recovery has been a little bit slower than I hoped it would be, but I'm back. I'm not going to say I'm going to be back on as regular a schedule as I was before. To a large extent, I'm kind of taking tiny baby steps to start back to my inverted commas work, such as it is. And I'm trying things out. But I'd want to get back to doing the videos because obviously it's something I can do wherever I am, so no travelling involved. And I can reach lots of people. So, what I want to talk about today is something that I had to deal with. Very often these videos are prompted by things that I've had to deal with. And in this case, it's feeling overwhelmed. Now, I felt quite overwhelmed by pain, by immobility, by depression, and I've been through some very, very rough times since I had my surgery, but being honest, nothing more than most people would go through. And if I'm really being brutally honest, an awful lot of the problems were being caused because I had unrealistic expectations what I could or should be able to do. And that's something I think a lot of us can relate to. But the feeling of overwhelm can happen when there's just so much going on that you don't know which way to turn or what to deal with first. Now, we can feel overwhelmed as much by really good things as we can by the really bad things. Because, think about a bride planning her wedding. That's something that she wants. Or think about, a holiday being planned. That's something that's very much wanted. And the natural expectation is to think, oh, it's going to be stress-free. Well, reality is anything can cause stress, because anything that needs you to do things or to manage things or to cope with things can leave you thinking, I don't know how to cope with all this, even if what you're planning for is something that you've wanted for a long time. But it is probably more commonly associated with the bad things that can come out of the blue. Illness, redundancy, bereavement, all these things are the sorts of situations that people say, yeah, I get that you can feel overwhelmed by that. The secret to coping with overwhelm is not to try and cope. Because if what's going on in your mind is, what am I going to do about this? What am I going to do about that? What's going to happen then? How are things going to happen in the future? What if this goes wrong? What if that goes wrong? All these things relate to the future. And the bottom line is, you have no control over the future. The future is going to happen almost regardless of anything that you do. So you can be in the middle of planning something really wonderful and it gets totally derailed when something goes catastrophically wrong. Or you can be dealing with something really bad and unwanted, and suddenly something will happen that will feel good, even in the middle of all the grief and upset. And you never know when that is going to happen. So, the key to, as I've said, the key to coping with overwhelm is don't try. Seriously, don't try. If there is nothing in front of you that needs your immediate attention, then give yourself that attention. If there is something in front of you that needs your immediate attention, focus on that and nothing else. Because what you're dealing with in this moment is the only thing you've really got any control over. And that's where mindfulness can help, because if you practice mindfulness, practice the techniques, then it becomes second nature, and you'll suddenly realise that you're sitting there trying to deal with the top item on your to-do list, and your mind is jumping ahead 5, 10, 15 steps to something that doesn't actually matter at the moment. But you need to be mindful of your thoughts so that you can recognise when you need to pull back and think, right, this is what's in front of me. I've probably told you this before, but there could be people watching this video who've never seen me before, in which case, hi. But I went through a very bad time in 2008. My ex-husband died, and you might think, well, what's that got to do with her? Trust me, I won't go into the story, but I was central to trying to sort things out after he died, because basically there wasn't anybody else. You don't ask your 17-year-old son or your 80-odd in poor health year-old mother-in-law to deal with things like that, so it was up to me. And I went into what I called rabbit in the headlights mode. I kind of froze. I couldn't think. I really couldn't do very much. And so I had this huge long to-do list. I've often said that the paperwork around a bereavement is probably designed as occupational therapy for the bereaved, because there's so many people you've got to tell, that you've got to, banks and pensions and all sorts of people that need to be contacted. So I had a to-do list that was really quite long. And I basically gave myself permission to work through this list at a pace that suited me, because being honest, none of it was really time sensitive. And anything that is time sensitive obviously needs to be top of the list so it gets priority. But once I had crossed one thing off the list, even if that was just making one quick phone call, I gave myself permission to put the list away and to spend the rest of the day exactly as I wanted to. If that was working through one or two more items on the list, fantastic. But if that meant that I wrapped myself up in my duvet and played on the PlayStation all day, that was equally fine. I didn't expect more of myself than I was able to give. And that's where mindfulness comes in again, because you've got to be aware of how much time and energy you've got to give to dealing with things, and how your energy, how quickly doing things depletes your energy. So being mindful of that is another good reason to practice mindfulness, because it does help you cope. So to anyone out there who is feeling overwhelmed, either by something really good or by something really bad, I want to say, I get it. You're not alone. There will be loads of other people in the world who are going through exactly the same as you, right here, right now. And I want to invite you, just take a deep breath in. And then as you breathe out, slowly breathe out. Consciously relax your shoulders. Maybe consciously get a sense of your body settling down further into the chair or onto the bed. And then repeat it. Another deep breath in. And then releasing it slowly. Consciously relaxing. And just give yourself a break. Don't, the moment you start thinking about what you've got to do, take a deep breath, breathe in, slowly breathe out, keeping your attention on the breath, and let those thoughts of what you've got to do just float away like balloons. What is important is not what you do. What is important is who you are. This is about being you. And giving yourself time out to just be you can give you renewed energy and strength to cope with the things that need you to be more of a doing person. Because as I've said, I've been there with that to-do list that seems several miles long, feeling I can't cope with this. Now, I'm not going to guarantee when I will be doing my next video, but if there is something you would like me to cover in my next video, then just leave a comment or DM me on whatever social platform you've seen this video on. And before I close, I just want to remind you of one very important thing, which is something I know I always remind you about this, but it's so easy to forget it when you feel overwhelmed. You matter. However you cope with what's going on in your life, you are still you. You are still important. You still matter. So talk kindly to yourself. Give yourself the care and attention that you need, because nobody else can give you that care in the same way. Namaste.